One of the more contentious topics surrounding world football is how much money is invested within it. We've already seen Paul Pogba, a 23-year-old, being sold to Manchester United for a stunning £89 million. Football is fast becoming a businessman's game. We've already seen it as well with Gareth Bale previously being sold to Real Madrid for £85 million. And today I have special guest Michael Thompson on the line. He works for M Football as a journalist and commentator covering the A-League. Michael worked for 442, a publication concentrated on football, which has over 400,000 followers on Twitter. Michael has also covered the Asian Champions League, the premier club tournament in Asia. And we'll get him on the line right now. Michael, are you there?
Indeed, I am. Thanks for having me today, Jonathan.
No problem. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me. So, first of all, Michael, I kind of want to steer away from the Paul Pogba transfer because it's kind of been done to death by a lot of news outlets around the world. So I thought I would ask for your opinion on previous world-breaking transfers, such as Gareth Bale's. So he was sold to Real Madrid for £85 million back in 2013. Which team do you think has won out in that transfer? Real Madrid or Tottenham Hotspur?
I was going to say probably the team that did win out in that one was most likely Real Madrid because Madrid, even though they were milked by the Spurs to give the Spurs more money for Gareth Bale, we saw Gareth Bale, get a chance to go and play in Spain for one of the biggest clubs in the world. Unfortunately for the Spurs, they picked up some players that didn't do too well when they recruited them with the money that they got for Gareth Bale. So you've got players like Paulino, SYN Media, who now plays for Watford, Roberto Soldado, who he's playing as well in another league in Europe as well, and Chadley. But they were sort of promised. They were going to be the players that could fill Gareth Bale's positions, and that they needed players up forward, they needed players in the midfield. But probably the one player that did win out from that was Eric Lamela, who was also part of that 5-player deal in the Gareth Bale saga, where Lamela now, he still plays. He's actually playing pretty well as well. He played well last season for the Spurs. But just to put it in short, I think Real Madrid did win that trade.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Lamela there. I mean, he plays in a pretty similar position as Bale. He's a out-and-out winger. And did you consider that a like-for-like trade, not in terms of quality, but position-wise?
I think it was, yeah, because as soon as Lamela came into the squad, because his first game he came off the bench for Tottenham, as soon as he came off the bench and showed his promise, Lamela, he just looked really comfortable through the attacking midfield for the Spurs. And at the moment for him, no one on the Spurs team has really looked at Lamela and tried to threaten him for his position on the team, especially in the starting 11.
Mm-hmm. And in saying that, do you think Bale was worth £85 million?
At the time, I don't think he was worth that much. I think he was worth probably between 65 to 75 million pounds. But I think the Spurs just wanted to see how much they could get out of Real Madrid, to see how much Real Madrid would be happy to spend on Gareth Bale to bring him over to Spain. And I think Spurs sort of milked probably an extra 5-10 million out of Gareth Bale and Real Madrid to make sure that he was the one to get through in the end. What was really funny as well was, I think Spurs were asking for 90 at one point, and Real Madrid sort of went back and said, we'll give you 85, and that's when Spurs sort of cracked and said, we're happy with 85 million.
Yeah, and we're talking about, huge figures. I mean, in the negotiation tactics, you're talking upwards of over £80 million. Do you agree with Jose Mourinho's comment that the market has become crazy?
I think it has, especially with Manchester City, who was brought up by, by an oil company in the UAE. Like they're basically giving money to Manchester City to spend and buy all these decent players that they need for their team, and so far it's worked over the last 4 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And do you think there should be a strict salary cap placed upon football? I know they have some minor equalisation measures, but as seen with the Paul Pogba transfer, which was worth £89 million, it doesn't stop these elite clubs, like you mentioned, Real Madrid, Manchester United even. They can just really spend, it seems, all they want. Do you think that should be restricted?
I think there was talk about restricting players and restricting each club to, I think, close to £100 million at one point. The Premier League, the FA itself, we're actually going to look at that and actually see what they can do with sort of restricting it, so it's a little bit fair and it's an even playing field for all clubs, because it's a little bit unfair on those that don't get as much profit for, say, your Sunderlands and your Watfords and all those kind of teams that, are not doing too well in the Premier League compared to, your Liverpools, your Chelseas, your Arsenals, your Manchester United, your Manchester Cities. There was talk about it. I think restricting it would be good in even playing field, but then it would create an uproar for a lot of those clubs that have a little bit more money to spend to their advantage. So like your Manchester City, your Manchester United, who this past transfer window has gone past, have just gone crazy, spending up big.
And you've seen, in the past, though, that you don't necessarily have to spend big in order to be successful. Leicester City would be the prime example of that. We're talking about, a Gareth Bale transfer, which was £85 million, but the Leicester City team, as a collective, was probably not even worth that much in of itself. So do you think it's still possible to be successful if you pick up the right players, or do you think football is becoming a businessman's game?
I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest, John. I think the one thing that Leicester City was able to show that, the players that weren't even worth, like, if you look at Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez, if you look at them compared 12 months ago, they were probably worth 2.5, 3.5 million pounds each. But now if you look at their value, they're worth, 30, 40 million pounds because of the success it came with Leicester. And, Vardy wasn't even a household name 12 months ago. He was a household name with the Foxes, a household name in the Championship. But when he came to the Premier League, no one knew exactly who he really was. Same with Mahrez. And then once we saw how Leicester went, Mahrez and Vardy and even Kante, who went over to Chelsea, they became household names at Leicester City. And it's very interesting as well because if you look at Southampton have got one of probably the best academy over in England right now with the way they bring up their players, and it's a shame that they don't have the money to keep them because of the currency issue. And a lot of those players who have gone from Southampton's academy have gone on to bigger and better clubs and have just performed so well. And it does happen, and we've seen in the past. We've seen, Leeds United 15 years ago who were in the same position as Leicester. They didn't have the biggest names. They had a Mark Viduka, Harry Kewell, Roy Keane, who were probably worth 4 or 5 million, and then they had one good season. I think it was in the 2000-2001 season where I think they finished in the top 5, and that's when their currency came up, and then it came to a point where they physically couldn't afford to keep those players around.
That's a great point you raise, especially about the Southampton Academy. As a matter of fact, Bale came from there. Theo Walcott as well, who plays for Arsenal. It's a shame they can't actually keep these players, because if they did, we'd be talking about Southampton, right up there with, quote unquote, the big four: Manchester United, City, Chelsea, and Arsenal. It's just that the system itself, it doesn't really allow for that. And yeah, it is a shame. Once you develop players, they don't necessarily stay. That's definitely a good point you raise. And I was wondering, with the Bale transfer, do you think he has lived up to the expectations? Not necessarily the price tag, but the expectations of Real Madrid?
I think he's had an on and off career at Real Madrid over the last 3 seasons. I know now that I think Real Madrid is sort of regretting because there's a bit of an issue with Gareth Bale at the club itself. But putting that aside for one moment, I think Gareth Bale, I think the first season he came in, he was a little bit quiet, but I think the 2014-2015 season was where he really hit his straps, and he was sort of an integral part of Real Madrid's best 11. I think that's what Carlo Ancelotti really wanted to get out of Gareth Bale, which is one full season. And I think he came in so late to Real Madrid in 2013-2014. I think he needed a bit of time to sort of develop, because if you look at La Liga and the Premier League, La Liga is a little bit more slow-paced, but the Premier League's a bit more fast-paced in the way they play their football.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's such a difference between when you're crossing over leagues. It's like when they compare Messi and Ronaldo against each other. Messi has always predominantly been a Barcelona player, whereas Ronaldo has proven himself across, 2 different parts of the world in La Liga and the English Premier League. And La Liga, like you said, is a bit slower than the English Premier League. So thanks for joining me today, Michael, and hopefully we see some really competitive football matches as the season develops.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much for that, Jonathan. I really enjoyed the chat today.
No problem. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening.